born English. I'm the eldest of 6 children. I was born to very young parents. My mum was just 20 when she had me. And literally, I grew up with my whole family living on the same road. So my parents moved next door to my grandparents when they got married. And I had other grandparents down the road, and my great-grandma lived opposite. And I grew up in a very sheltered environment. And this was kind of what I knew till I spent a year in Israel, and then I came back from Israel, and I went off and studied law. I met my husband at law school, and just before we got engaged, he got an offer to go and study business in New York. By this point, I'd already realized that being a lawyer was not for me. And I was in the middle of studying for a master's in Jewish education. I'd left the law and gone for something completely different. So I was feeling pretty claustrophobic with London Jewish life. So when my husband, who was not, he was just my boyfriend at the time, but when he said, "How would you feel about moving to New York?" I was like, okay, let's do it. We got engaged, and literally a week after we got married, we went to New York, which was totally different world for me because, as I said, I lived a very sheltered life, and we knew absolutely nobody in New York at all. But I completed my master's in Jewish studies there, and my husband studied as well. And then he got a job after a couple of years in a bank. And we actually ended up staying in New York for 7 years. So 3 out of 4 of my kids were born in New York. And we only returned to London in 2011. So just I kind of want to focus on the I think the year or the 6 months before we left New York, because when my son was born, he was my 3rd child. I had 2 older daughters at the time. One wasn't even 4 yet, and one had just turned 2. And I then found myself with another baby, pregnant again, and then I had my son. And we had no family there, and it was a pretty difficult time. My husband worked long hours, and there was a point when I had my son, and this was now my 3rd child, where the Jewish school community that we were a part of, the nursery actually that my 2 young daughters were attending, they completely showered us with love and concern when I had my third child. And they organized for us a food rota. They helped take care of my two other daughters. My family were in the middle of, I think, making Aliyah at the time. One of my grandmas in London was very sick. And so, for want of words, it was quite isolating. And it basically, it really stuck with me how much the community we were part of in New York really carried us during a difficult time. So why I refer to that point in time is because when we got back to London in the summer of 2011, we came to a Jewish community in London where we knew some of the people here, and my kids joined a lovely Jewish primary school. And after the first few months, I noticed, being a new mum in the school, that there were a lot of new parents who didn't really know each other, and there were a lot of old parents who did know each other and would kind of like support one another, but that support wasn't kind of forthcoming to those who were more new or younger in the school community that we had joined. So I decided to start what I labeled a chesed initiative. Chesed being the Jewish word for loving kindness. I had to go through a parents-teacher association pretty aggressive quiz to try and understand why a community that was pretty well institutionalized, and everyone seemed to think they all knew and supported each other, why I thought that actually it would be helpful to try and find those people within our community that needed help and maybe were too shy or didn't know how to access help, and match their needs with volunteers who had quite a bit of time on their hands and would like to provide help. And in the end, the motion got passed for me to start a chesed initiative. And it began by just simply finding out who in the community was new, who perhaps was going through a difficulty, a family bereavement, who had something as exciting as a birth happening, and who was even just going through a house move but didn't have the support of family. That PA or other friends in different London school communities who'd heard about something that our school had started, because they wished to begin something like this. And so I was able to advise them how to kind of sell it, and how to begin it. And it wasn't something too difficult, but I managed to amass a host of volunteers to find out what they were happy to volunteer with. And then it was a case of making people feel comfortable that they would come forward to say they did in fact need help, which for some people they needed coaxing, and I had to get the kind, what we call class reps of each of the classes to try and befriend the other parents in their class, so that the parents who were in need could feel comfortable enough to say when they were in a situation where they perhaps needed the help of the Chesed initiative. So this continued, and it kind of feels a bit old school now, because in our community now, and in a lot of my friends' communities, it became kind of a bit of a thing to be providing people with meals when they're having a baby, when there's an unfortunate death in the family. But for me, three situations really stuck out from being able to begin this, and not just kind of the spreading the love to wider communities. The first was, we were able to help a family, an Israeli family who had moved over, and both parents were working, and they had one young child, and then the mother found herself pregnant again, and she when she gave birth, we kind of instituted a whole meal rota to help them. They had no family at all, and they had no friends who were supporting them at all. And she wrote me this really touching letter, which I wish I had kept, to basically say how much the school community had helped them get through a pretty difficult first few weeks when they had their second child. Later, another family had, unfortunately, the mother gave birth to a child who ended up having to be in hospital for quite an extended period. And we were also able to help kind of carry that family for a while. And this included being able to kind of gather other mothers who would help ferry the kids back and forth to school, help with after school play dates, not just food related. And again, it was wonderful to see this kind of huge meeting of love between those who didn't even know this family, but were kind of on the roster of volunteers, and really were so eager and keen to use some of their spare time to help out this family, and just seeing how much that family's needs got met. And then I think finally the most important aspect of this came to light when a family who, not long after they moved to London, unfortunately had a child who got diagnosed at the young age, I think of 4 or 5, with cancer. And it completely threw their whole world upside down. And they had 2 other children. They didn't have family living in London. And for 3 months, our school community was able to provide them through me liaising with their. They had an au pair / housekeeper, liaising with her every day about what groceries the family needed, what meals the family needed, where the children needed to be, and we really helped support that family for an extended period of time. And I know that made a vital difference to their being able to cope with what they had to go through at the time. So this is really kind of the end of my story. I don't have too much more to say. It's an ongoing thing that we've kept running in our school. I know that it got started, as I said, about 8-9 years ago, after we began in quite a lot of other Jewish schools, and it's something that I'm really proud of, because I can see that it has made a crucial difference to certain families who either would have been maybe too embarrassed to ask, maybe aren't socially involved enough in the community where their needs are obvious, and it's kind of produced friendships, and it's brought people together within our community who never would have possibly spoken or known each other, and it's just been a big success. So that's it, really. I hope I didn't speak too quickly.
You are truly a love engineer. I don't know why. When I asked Samantha several weeks ago whether she could say anything, she said, "Oh, I'm not an interesting person," but I think this is fabulous what you've done. 8-9 years of following through is just, you are a true love engineer. We need more people like you. Very glad to have you on our team.
The only problem was you stopped speaking.
It's very hard for me. It's probably the first time where I've had to speak about something that I'm proud of, or look at myself in kind of a positive light. It's not an easy, it doesn't come easily to me. So that was quite challenging.
Because you don't like talking, you like doing. Yeah, are you a doer as opposed to a talker?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I haven't kind of analyzed it enough. It's just that it's not. I'm not someone who finds it easy to look at kind of what I've managed to do, I guess, to succeed in.
Can I say something?
Yes, go for it. Yes.
So I think it's amazing what you did, because I moved here 15 years ago, and when my kids were in primary school, having moved here from New York, I ran the parent-teacher thing, I organized rotas, I did everything, and I came here and nobody did anything.
Yeah.
Like, I was really alone for years. I had my second baby alone, and I actually went through breast cancer alone. Like,
Wow.
not one person brought me one meal, and I have 4 kids in that school.
Wow.
Whatever you did, I think it's amazing. And other schools, I mean, I'm going to cry just because I wish I had known you. Sorry. What you did, because not that I needed so much support, but I was so alone, because English people, I find, don't do chesed like us in New York. I don't know why. And so I applaud you, and I think it's amazing what you did.
Oh, thank you. You've made me cry too. I wish I had known you.
Really amazing, because families need it. And even if you have help, like people used to say to me, oh, you don't need anything, you have help, you're spoiled. I had breast cancer and I had 4 kids. Like, how can you be spoiled? You know? So no matter what, I applaud you, and I think it's incredible what you did from my heart.
I don't know if you have to run off, but would anybody else like to say something to Samantha?
I also wish I met you, but I'm so happy I met you now.
We know each other now.
We know.
Wow, amazing.
I'd like to ask you, Samantha, if does anybody else have something that they want to say? Anita, yes.
That is just a really practical question. How do you spell the word that you're using? Kashi.
Oh, that's CHESED. It means CHESED, and it means loving kindness.
Okay, thank you.
It's a biblical word. It comes from the time of Abraham.
Right, thank you. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. I love it. Thank you for sharing.
That CH is a guttural CH. It's ch, not ch. So I'd like to ask you, since you set something up that was so successful, and you've thought about how to produce something, do you think that you could do that, I don't say on a more industrial proportion, but can you think of how to do that on a wider level so that other schools could have the same sort of community effort that you've engendered in your school?
Is this an immediate response, or is this something?
No, I'd like you to think about it. Like you to think about it.
Yeah.
That what were the steps that you took to set something up like that, and would you be able to then go to other schools as part of Loving Classroom and say, this is what we've done in this school, and we suggest that you do it in your school, because it creates a community, and it certainly creates a forum for helping people in need. I mean, it ticks like many of the boxes of Loving Classroom.
And it is needed. It is needed. in other schools.
I mean, it's definitely needed. If Joyce was there by herself and dealing with all that, it's definitely needed. There's more Joyces in this world.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sorry that I have to run and collect my kids from camp. But thank you for listening.
We love you.
Thank you for listening to me.
Wow.
I hope I didn't chew your ear off.
No, it was.
We loved it. We loved it very much.
Mesmerized. Mesmerized.
Everybody can unmute. By the way, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Wow. Wow. Hello, everybody. I also had a story which Nomi said, my wife, she said, I don't think you should tell this story. Doesn't make it look very good. And I guess I'd like to share this story, possibly against my wife's advice, I'm sorry, but because it was inspired a lot by this group, and I don't always have to show my strengths and this, that, and the other. But if everybody would rather me skip the story, I'll skip. I can look at the faces there. I think I'll...
Well, you've whet their appetite.
Whet the appetite, so shall I go for it? Okay, so I went shopping on Friday to our local supermarket there, and a guy comes up to me and he says to me, because it's the weekend and the Sabbath, there's like more food and everything, he says, I want you to know I'm working very hard, but because of the corona and everything, I just can't afford to buy any food here today. I've got nothing to buy food with. And I'm so embarrassed. I've got 7 kids. I'm happily married. He's about like close to 30 years old. He's got nothing. I can't buy anything. Can you give me anything to help? And I didn't have any cash on me. He said, well, maybe I can buy some things. And I thought of this group, and I thought of the story of various stories that are being told, like going into the Starbucks or whatever and thanking the guy and buying a cup of coffee. And I thought of the humanity being, and I thought of this person is part of me. This person is part of me. And it's because we're having these groups, and it's a funny thing, even though, yes, I sort of wrote this book, I sort of understand the theory of love, but I have this block, and, you know, we definitely give our tzedakah to people, but tzedakah is charity and everything. But I felt very sort of like, oh, how much do I give him? And then I said, I want to give him to the point that it hurts me. And so the sums weren't necessarily, I don't have to share the sums, but I decided to give him what would hurt me. I suppose if I sat down, Nomi, which I'm sure would say, fine, whatever, da, da, da. So I chose a sum. I said, you buy this amount and I'll pay for it. And he went away and he was very happy, and it da, 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 da. And we got to the checkout and he like put it through, and it came to twice the amount that I said he could spend. And it wasn't that much, but it was like twice the amount. So if I'd have made a fuss, I'd have embarrassed him. That'd be terrible. Oh my gosh, that would have been terrible. And so I again thought about the humanity being and this group and all the goodness like we just heard today. And I just said, and I started thinking about that, and I closed my eyes and I started feeling a great joy in my heart that I'm helping a fellow member of the humanity being. And suddenly that pain just turned into joy. It was quite miraculous. And I said, nope, you can have it. It's fine. Don't worry. So he went off, and then he called me outside the shop. He cornered me and he said, listen, I know I spent double. I do have this amount of money here. I'll pay you back for the other half because that wasn't part of the deal. And I said to him, I said, oh no, that's it, deal done. I'm happy. I can't tell you, I feel like we're brothers. And we hugged each other, and he's my brother, and he went off into the distance. And I feel that it wasn't just like helping him, it was the fact that I finally became a joyful giver. And on a practical level, like I'm more the theoretical and Nomi's down to earth, she's constantly giving. But for me to become joyful in my giving through the process of remembering the humanity being and recognizing he is my soul, we are one. it wasn't just the giving, it was the fact that I found a joy in my heart. And so when I hear these stories, they just reinforce it. And I wasn't going to say it, but when I heard that story, I felt, you know what, I'd like to share it, even though it makes me look bad because I'm not such a natural giver. But I, in the end, became a natural giver, and I felt that joy of giving. And I think I'm changing to become a better person as a result of learning the stuff myself and being part of this group. So thank you for letting me share my little story, which was triggered by the last one. Okay, we can move on. Shall we?
We'll talk about the 5.
Did anybody want to make any comment? You can unmute yourself and make a comment. I'm not looking for comments or praise or any or but you're welcome to if you wish.
I do think it's important to have stories for people to learn from. I actually think people learn through stories. I was watching actually United at Sana and how successful Elie Bear is, but he is so, people love him because of his life-saving stories.
Who? Sorry?
Elie Bear, the founder of United.
Oh, the head of Hatzalah, yes.
Stories of how he saves lives. And as you were talking, I was thinking, we don't hear enough of these stories every single day of actually what little things can be done to change our own perspective. And I think we need these stories.
So I'd like to follow on from that. 2 people just today posted 2 stories very similar. One was Shira Drion. She posted one, and Howard Turner posted another one. They were very similar stories. Somebody that had like either almost killed somebody or did kill somebody in their youth, and then there was a coming together of the perpetrator with a victim or a family member of a victim, and they made peace between them. There was an understanding, there was forgiveness, and let's move forward. They're both beautiful stories. One was in America, and one was in England. And I just thought these 4 characters, 2 in America and 2 in Britain, should know about Loving Classroom, because what they did is what we do in Loving Classroom. And in order to prevent future occurrences of like somebody almost being killed, and unfortunately, you know, you look out the window, you turn on the news, whatever it is, and you hear about terrible things going on out there. We do need to prevent those things. If we could get hold of these people in America and in Britain and make them ambassadors for Loving Classroom. So the question is, 1, do you agree with that? And 2, would anybody like to be responsible for like getting hold of their information and contacting them and saying, hey, this is what we do, and would you like to be involved with our organization? Would you like to be involved in trying to get what you did in a private sphere into the public sphere of schools, to make sure that children are learning that crucial lesson of love that you came to through very, very difficult and awful, really dreadful circumstances? What do people think about that? Anybody?
I have an idea.
Yes.
I have an idea. I actually think that it's to be impactful. I think in a way the youths that are practicing this in South Africa should actually reach out and write letters to these people saying, this is what we're learning and it was impactful, and they should reach out to them because they're really experiencing it. And I think an adult to tell an adult is very different, but when a child says that if we learned this young enough, we could be able to benefit from this. And I think it's very impactful that if each one of these kids, like they can almost, I just had an idea, they could have pen pals, like almost like prison pen pals, and reach out to them and speak to them about their experiences and how it's changed them and how it's changing their worlds, and reach out. And they can be educating adults.
I think that's yeah, I had somebody else wanted to speak first. Let somebody else speak. I heard a voice. Nope. So I think that's an amazing idea. And I was looking around for Tulani. I just saw he was here at the beginning of the conversation, but they had problems there. Somebody ripped up an internet cable and he is having problems connecting. It was a stolen internet cable.
We can do a recording of this, David, because he must hear this.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, Joyce, that is an inspirational idea. And I think it has mega opportunities to be fulfilled.
Especially for the children.
Yes,
I think the children that are participating, then they take ownership. And when you take ownership of something, it makes you grow. Like, I think those 2 stories were amazing that they told, but unfortunately, that's based on dramatic, unfortunate events. Why can't we base it on people that are doing good? Like, just, right. I mean, the guy shot one shot and almost killed her. And it's an amazing what they came out of it. But we should think of the people that are present and living and doing good today.
Very much so. It needs to be part of institutionalized, so it becomes part of society, not just exceptional, amazing, dramatic stories, which are very inspiring, but the change comes from society.
And I think if the kids that are doing Loving Classroom, if they can take something away from it, then they're even growing more and helping others grow.
It gives them the dignity. And in fact, isn't it nice that South Africa's leading the way? It gives me great pleasure. That's a fantastic idea. And I'm absorbing it. And when I say fantastic, I'm absorbing it. I mean, it's fantastic, and I really do absorb it. We'll work on that one. And I think it will work on that one. Good. Wow, I can see the time has shot past, and we've been storyizing and not filmingizing. That's fine. What we were going to ask, and maybe we'll leave it to next week, did anybody do their 5 values for the home? Did the 5 virtues for the home? If you remember that activity, to have 5 virtues for the home. So we're not going to ask anybody to own up yes or not, but maybe for next week, to make a list of the people in your home for 5 virtues. And the second question that we started to gel around was, these films are very nice, but if you're not teachers going to teach it in the classroom, you see them and you sort of like, they flash past and they're very fast and they're meant to be paused and pondered with the book. Would people here be interested in slowing down and getting a copy of the book, so that even if you're not teachers in the classroom, that each person has a group and takes that group through those, at least the first chapter on respect, because the next film finishes the chapter on respect, and that's a unit. So those were the 2 questions we were going to ask, but I can save the answers to next week, and we can discuss it next week.
What do you mean have a group?
Well, suppose if you can find a group of, let's say, 6 people, and you take them through the first chapter of respect in the book. How do you do that? Well, then you can look at the videos and see it in depth, how to do it, and you actually prepare. And that way you master the engineering of how to build, a loving world, as opposed to just seeing the videos and then moving on. So it was an idea to make it more practical, these groups, so that you have your own group and you actually go through the sort of like the process of, well, how do I teach these 3 pages? And in this way, we become real masters of the book. But that strengthens our ability to build a loving world, because we can see that loving engineering works, and we're trying to get deeper in that level of being able to actually give this material over. Treating you as teachers, but not teachers in school environment. Maybe you can have a Zoom group, by the way. It doesn't have to be on a physical group because of this day and age, but it's a group of people, maybe kids or maybe youngsters, that you're taking them through the first chapter on respect and helping, going back instead of wishing forwards, going back to make sure that you can really do this for a group of 6 or so people, or 10, something like that. Is that a good idea, a bad idea? Was it a clear idea?
I think it's a good idea.
Joyce, what do you think?
I have to think about it. I had a lot going on in my house as we're during the conversation. One of my sons just got a job offer, and so I wasn't fully fully here, so I can't comment. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to re-ask that question next week. Nikki, what do you think?
I'm a bit. I don't think I'm as good a teacher as you. But I do. I was thinking initially of like doing that kind of thing with my children, but I'm trying to come to terms with other issues first, like under the mud.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I think it's a discussion to. I'd like it for next week. We'll maybe discuss it a little bit about how we can become teachers of the material and what are the blocks, and maybe not to do it. But I think through doing that, all these principles become a million times deeper in terms of our ability. And then we see that we can create educational systems throughout the world that genuinely builds a loving world. It's a deeper level of acquiring the material. So I'm going to dwell on the blocks of doing that next week. I won't go through everybody this week.
I had one other idea, because I know get into schools and stuff was not such an easy idea. But like in a lot of schools, like in my kids' school, Emmanuel College, each one of them started activities. Like one of my sons started the economics club and he brought in speakers. Maybe we can get some of the kids to start Loving Classroom. And once a week, they have a speaker that comes and speaks. And it's like a club that they create instead of the chess club or the economics club. And that's a way to get into the schools firsthand without getting the program in the school. And then the kids have an opportunity to say they started a group within their school.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. That's the way.
That's the way.
Because then that way you can get in sneakily into all the schools. Like we can have like Jesse and Elijah do it at Emmanuel College. Raquel and our boys are older, but some of the kids in different schools can just start it as a club. And once a week they have a speaker on Zoom. And that's all you need for the club to run. Right. And then once a week they learn.
You are brilliant, Joyce.
Joyce,
you're coming up with fantastic
and Nikki,
ideas.
I can see someone's watching behind your back and thinking that's a good idea.
I'm not brilliant. Hi.
Hey, Rafi.
Hi, Rafi. I missed
Rafi.
you.
Hello, Rafi. Joyce,
Rafi,
I can't imagine what it's like when you're fully present. You're just like shooting out all these good ideas and you're half here. Oh my gosh.
Right.
We're glad to have you on our team too.
Thank
Do
you.
you want to play the...
Okay. No, there's no time. We're 8:03. We are finished for this week. No time for any videos or anything.
Amazing today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra, lots of love. Thank you, everybody. That was wonderful.
Rafi, this is for you, Rafi.